Okay, we're back.
We are back, and I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction now that when that video is released, whenever it is, regarding your interview, it will receive a lot of feedback. And I'm predicting that so many are going to appreciate your openness, your vulnerability, your heart. And it's something we don't hear enough. What you shared with the world in the last recording is something that very few people never even hear from a pulpit in the church that they belong. And I know it's one of the reasons I'm drawn to you as a close friend. And my only apology is that it took me so long to realize I don't need to be speaking all the time. I've got a wealth of wisdom and knowledge and love in my partner in England. And anyway, great job. And let's go ahead and go for part two.
Okay, thanks, James.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about your siblings a little bit. By the way, you didn't mention this, which blows my mind. It's like his family was so academically achieving. The, Now, wait a minute. Let's talk about just the universities and grad schools that your siblings have attended. I know we can start out with Cambridge
Well,
for
let
all
me just,
three.
I don't want to drag my siblings into it, but I
No,
will,
but it's a compliment.
I know, but it's their lives. I just don't want to, if this ever,
We Let's
it's
just
like,
say highly educated, Cambridge, Oxford, NYU.
they were all very we were quite an academic family. My dad's like a well-known, you can look up my dad, and my mum. My mum was a filmmaker in the end, but my dad was like a well-known scientist atheist in Britain, Lewis Wolpert. So there's YouTube clips of him, and he was a well-known kind of science professor of embryology, biology is applied to medicine, but
He
embryology.
did not like being called a philosopher.
He was quite idiosyncratic in his beliefs, and he was a bit dismissive of philosophy unless it suited him. To be fair, he and he was a bit, he was an atheist debater, so him and Richard Dawkins would sometimes share a stage, or and he'd often in the sort of late 80s, 90s, he was on the circuit in
Right.
England on radio and television and writing books, talking
How
about
many books did he write?
it's got to be about six, I think, something
Yeah.
like
I
that.
read one of them.
Which one was it that you read? The
I can't remember the title now, but I remember it was right when I wanted to become closer to you as a friend.
Was it the one on ment or was it the one about religion? Six impossible things before breakfast.
Yes, it
Yeah.
sure was.
So, and that was partly because I used to evangelize him a lot. I used to, and there was a story that he thought was hilarious. Because when I was in the church, I was very depressed a lot of the time. And there was one time I said to him, I kind of envy you, Dad, because you're getting towards the end of your life. And he was like, "Oh, why do you envy me?" Well, because like, the end, like you're getting close to the end and then there's heaven. And then I think he told my sister, like, "Oh, Matthew thinks I'm going to heaven or something."
Yeah.
And then I said to him, "No, Dad, I envy you. Not, no, you're not going to heaven. I'm the one who's going to heaven." It was something like that. I can't remember the story now, but he just thought it was hilarious, the story, and he used to tell it at dinner parties and stuff. I've told it wrong. I can't quite remember. I have to
No,
see.
but you got the punchline. Dad, I'm
Yeah, but
not
it was.
talking about you.
I'm
I'm
not talking about
talking
you,
about
Dad. I'm
me.
talking about me going to heaven.
Right.
And unfortunately, before he died, you know, I had a very different theology. Thank God, both my parents, I was able to apologize for all the my condemnation and
I remember when I read your dad's book, he wrote about you,
mm,
and he told me that he did not believe in religion. It wasn't his deal, but he saw what it did for you,
mm,
and he was happy.
mm,
It brought him peace and joy.
mm.
He said he had never seen you with so much peace and purpose as what you had. You know, that is wonderful that he wrote that as a memory. That's how much he loved you. So anyway, thanks for sharing about your family. Yeah, I wanted you to talk about your dad, so that's wonderful. And I don't think I asked this last time. Why did you leave the church? There was that after the coming back, there was something that said, "That's it. I'm leaving. Won't be back now." What was it?
Did you mean in 2003, the second time
Yes.
you left?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's when my eyes, from my point of view, my eyes were opened. So the first time I left in 95, I still believed all the doctrine. I just thought I couldn't live up
Correct.
to it.
Yeah.
In 2003, I was unhappy for a couple of years. I mean, I've been unhappy most of the time, but there were sort of like ups and downs. But the last 2 or 3 years, from about 2000 to 2000, the end of 2002, I was kind of one of those guys sitting at the back of church. Although I might have been leading a Bible discussion. It was all a bit complicated, but I basically was unhappy. And then uh, Mark Templar, I mean, again, this is on record. Mark Templar came back from this big conference in America. Things opened up with the staff. The staff started sharing all their issues. It turned into the beginning of 2003. It turned into a town hall, uh, a spontaneous town hall. I like to think I started that, but who knows? Because I asked the first question to Mike Fontenot. That's my claim. Might not be true. Um, and then, but it was like as people started to share the feelings about control, about dating, as the staff revealed, they hadn't been, it was like my wife tells me I need to finish my sentences, but let me try and express it this way. The thing that had kept me in for so many years was I looked at the staff, the leaders, and I thought, well, it's working for them. It's
Right.
working for them. So the problem must be me. The minute I realized it wasn't working for them either, it was like, the problem isn't me, and the problem's not them either. The problem is this doesn't work. And then it wasn't that much of a short hop to what exactly is this? Oh, what exactly are we? Oh, we're the Pharisees. And I keep using that word. And I'm not, because I think the New Testament has a particular legalistic, power hungry, self righteous, hypocritical people. Because even about with my dad, I didn't really share with my dad how unhappy I was in the church. I mean, he could see it sometimes.
Right.
And he knew, all he knew was that actually I'd had a really rough time and now I was religious. So I wasn't getting into trouble anymore, which is true. I wasn't taking drugs and I was sort of like having a semi-productive life, which is true. But once I saw like, oh, we're the Pharisees, we're the hypocrites, we're the ones pointing the finger at all the other churches, going, you're not real Christians, you're not real Christians, but we're not living up to it. I thought we had lived up to it. It just was. I thought I couldn't live up to it, but I thought the leaders were living up to it. And when I realized they weren't, it was kind of like scales falling from my eyes, and it was like I remember a moment when everything was kicking off. I remember just thinking, oh, we are the people who would have crucified Jesus. That we are the ones. We're the ones who would have if we'd had the power and it had been the right time, that's where our church was. We would have crucified Jesus. And from that point on, it was like, well, we've obviously got everything completely wrong. And then it was just a question of, I wanted the leadership all to step down, all of them. I wanted us all to go into a big hall and just beg God for forgiveness and pray and to apologize to all the other churches that we'd been like slandering for all these years. But that I couldn't even get the elder. I mean, this is all kind of on record. I couldn't get the elder to step down. They wouldn't let me challenge the elder in this London council meeting. And then even the people I was close to, they were saying things like, "Oh, we shouldn't get rid of God, the gospel." I was like, I don't know if any of it is true. I don't know any. Do I believe in God even like at this point? I think I do because I've had experiences of God, but like, is it Jesus? Like, I wanted to re-examine everything, and initially I wanted to do it all together, but I realized everyone was in different places, and to be fair, there were also people trying to hold on to power. So it wasn't even like everyone was in different places, but they were going, "Yeah, let's all work it out together." It was like, no, but we're still the leaders. That.
You say power, I say paychecks.
I don't think. I mean, maybe paycheck status quo. People were
Yeah.
scared of someone like me. Kind of, there was a point where if one person had backed me, I could have like got the elder to step down and we could have taken over. But I think people were scared about the idea of me taking over, which I can understand. There wasn't a great deal of trust, and but all I wanted to do was just get us to like be honest, apologize, and pray. That was
It
really
was not to happen.
it wasn't, and so that's why. So my wife actually left about a month before. I think my final decision to leave I was with a group of single brothers who were talking about changes and doing everything differently. But it was like some of them were talking about keeping God the gospel. Some of them were talking about, it was like we were all in different places. And I thought, this isn't going to work. I need to find out what I believe on my, I don't even know what I believe. So that's why I left in the end.
Thank you.
Mm.
By the way, I was reminded of a recent post of yours. It's only been a few days, and I'm not going to be able to do it exactly. You'll be able to help. But I loved it when you wrote. It was so eye opening for me that both of our churches, ICOC and then ICC, both of which were started and run by Kip, had two different sets of studies that they used for everybody that needed to do all those studies before they could get baptized. England, London, is unique in that we did our own. We said we don't want to use the ones that were in Boston. So we came up with our own and called them Guard the Gospel. You made the point the other day that in none of those, of all three of those comprehensive studies before getting baptized of what it means, what's expected, not one lesson on love. Not even one lesson on love. And we're talking all about how to become a New Testament Christian. And we had stuff on doctrine, and we had stuff on who's saved and who's not saved. And we had stuff on it was your sins that nailed them to a cross. We had all of those studies, not one on love. I find that fascinating that that's true. As you said, that tells you everything you need to know. That's what you said in your post.
It is what I said.
But it is amazing that I had not even noticed that.
But I would say the reason is because and this goes back to the God is love and
Yeah,
love is God. And I think this is a real deep problem in Christianity is love is a lot of the time love is because of that God is love thing. And that the other scripture is love is obedience to, if you love me, obey my commands, or love is basically it becomes love is obedience to the commands. So what we taught essentially was, look, if you do all these things, that is love.
right,
And it's not because 1 Corinthians 13 really helped me to see this clearly, at least from the Bible point of view. Look, I can give my body to the flames, I can give all my money to the
right,
poor, I can have faith that moves mountains, I can have wisdom and knowledge. But if I don't have love, so love is not all those things. Love is not doing all those things. Love is something deeper, something different. And I think in Christianity, and especially in the ICOC, we saw love as doing the things. If you do these things, that equals love.
love is obedience. Do what we're asking of you, and that's how you show your love.
Exactly. Exactly. So it doesn't, and don't worry, that whole teaching of do when your heart will follow.
Yeah,
And occasionally that can be something useful in a particular situation. I'm not but we took it to the end. It's like it doesn't matter how you're feeling, doesn't matter whether you just do it because that's the right thing to do, and then your heart will follow, or get your heart right. Get your heart right. And I understand all that. There is a logic to it. It's not
right,
completely, that's the powerful thing about this stuff, is it's very subtle because there's a logic to that and there's a wisdom to that. And there's sometimes
yeah,
occasions where it might be true. But fundamentally, we were not doing things out of an overflow of love. We were doing things, I was doing things a lot of time out of fear, duty, because it's the right thing to do, intellectual knowledge, doctrine, because I think it will get me a reward, whatever. Whereas love is like, oh, I care about this person. And so let me make them a cup of tea, or let me just think about them, or let me go on holiday with them, or let me, or like they really need me. Let me give my blood because they need my blood, or let me tell them about God because this God would really, if they believed in God now, it would really help them. Like, but there's no agenda. It's just I care about them. I just want to do anything to help them. Whereas we came from an agenda, and there is a subtle nuance between those things. But in the end, they diverge so greatly that one ends up crucifying Jesus, and the other one ends up being Jesus. Is how I would put
mm-hmm. Well said. Thank you. Well, let's go to the post heard around the world.
it. Okay.
So, as I mentioned, 413 comments, over 10,000 shares. And there'll be a lot more. This was in July. This is a couple months ago. That's an amazing traction. And to be frank, quite unlike your regular post. I mean, that yeah, we read it, we like it, we share it, we love it. But all of a sudden, this one caught on. Like I told you, I have a gay couple that I'm really close to that live in Mexico that I've done training work with in the Middle East. So I'm close to these guys. They don't even know what church I used to be in. They certainly don't know you. But then on my feed, I saw, oh look, they shared it. I mean, they read it, they saw it, and they shared it. And I thought, that's incredible how this thing made its way. So I want to read out what it is because I've got a copy of it here. I'm sure you could say it. Biblical legalism can lead you to believing a man marrying another man is a sin, but a man owning another man is not.
And I don't know why it caught off. Caught on. I don't know. I really don't know. Like obviously, there's a big issue with LGBTQ, and there's a big issue with slavery. And I'd imagine in America, it probably spread in America. It was probably quite a big American issue, more so than England necessarily. And the biblical thing. I do. What the heart of that for me is biblical legalism can really lead you up the garden path, and you see it so like to the point where with the point we end up crucifying God. That's where biblical legalism leads you. It's the very person you think you're trying to please, you end up crucifying because it's like, oh, uh, this passage says, wives, submit to your husbands. Well, he's beating her, but she still needs to submit. But he's beating her. No, she still. This passage says, um, do not eat. If somebody falls into sin, don't even eat with them or treat them like a tat. We need treat them like a tat. We need to ostracize. We need to not talk to them. I cannot go to my son's gay wedding. This passage says that if you do this, you're going to end up in hell. Oh my gosh, people are going to burn in hell for eternity. It is like if you take the Bible at face value, you treat it like a law, you treat it as something you've got to obey. Number one, it's impossible because no one does that. Everybody has their little get out of jail clauses. Doesn't really mean cut your hand off or pluck your eye out. That's metaphorical. But this bit, that's literal. Well, who decides what's literal and what's metaphorical? Well, we've got all these exegetical strategies that tell you do it, and everyone's got their own exegetical strategy because some places women cover their heads, some places women submit. The women issue is always a good one. Some places they pray in tongues, some they don't. Some they baptize for salvation, some they don't. Oh no, it's definitely baptism. Oh no, it's definitely not baptism. I mean, it's endless. It's endless. And the thing that they forget is love. It's just about love. And it's like all these things, once you actually realize about love, the Bible actually is quite a useful and insightful and powerful tool to remind you of things. I find it resonates a lot of the time with a lot of things, but it's not my master, it's not my boss. So with that post, it
Yeah.
came to me, I felt like classic God, the Spirit of God gave it to me because it was like two things came together in my mind. Like, oh my gosh, like the Bible, like according to biblical legalists, the Bible condemns homosexuality, but never really condemns slavery. You can make an argument that slavery is sort of not, but it never condemns that. No one says that a slave owner goes to hell. That's it. If you carry on being a slave, no one says that. It's like, oh, it's part of the culture. But if you're gay, you definitely go to hell. If you don't repent of that, you're definitely going. And it was like, oh my gosh. And then it was like the wording of it was like, if a man can marry another man, like that's a sin, but a man can own. So marriage between two men, where two men love each other and are trying to meet each other's needs and are trying to care for each other, that's worthy of hell. But a man owning another man who can pretty much treat him any way he wants. I mean, the Bible has some direction. You shouldn't just beat him to death for the sake of it. Although even that, there's a passage where it says you are his property in the Old Testament. It's like, well, that's acceptable. So it's like these two, it's like it's trying to break that cognitive dissonance in people's
Yes,
minds. And
yes,
I know I
yes,
had it for 15 years. Like
yes.
this idea and we've got to get to the universalism issue because it's idea of God is love, but you'll burn in eternity. You'll burn for eternity if you don't respond to that. I mean, forget like the annihilation for the minute, because some people have switched to annihilation because it's a bit more palatable. Let's just go with the original one we were all taught, which is like literally suffering, burning for it. We used to talk about, it'll be burning in hell and it will never stop and you'll never be quenched and you'll be just like full of fear and regret and gnashing of teeth. That was the thing we were kind of taught, or I was taught by the ICOC. That was kind of what hell was.
Right.
And and yet God loves you and God loves you. And yet he's going to let you suffer for eternity. And then the annihilation, and it's not that you can get a chance to go, okay, I blew it, forgive me. No, no, too late. This God who is love. Now, no, too late. You had your 75 years, or some of you only had 19 years, but that should have been enough for you to work out what life was all about. And then they kind of justify, oh no, it's annihilation. It's annihilation. So you're just going to be destroyed, just never going to exist ever again. Which to me I'm less terrified of it now because I've seen how bad life can get. But it used to terrify me, the idea of never getting a chance to exist again. It's pretty terrible. And God, who is love and loves this person as much as when they were born as a baby. No, I'm going to destroy you. No, but I repent. No, it's too late. You should have done it while you were alive. And then there was something else I wanted to say. The worst one, the one that annoys me the most, is that hell is closed from the inside. People are locked from the inside. Okay, if hell is locked from the inside, then people can go, "Oh, I want to come out now," and God will go, "Of course, come out." But they go, "No, no, 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 it doesn't work that way. You've made your decision." Then it wouldn't be hell. If people want to be in hell, it's clearly not hell because they're happy there. If you just take an ordinary human being and stick them in prison, they're always going to say whatever they need to say and do whatever they need to do to get out. And often it will be genuine. Often it'll be like, I really did blow it. Like human beings are not these hard-hearted, wicked, evil people that that we make them out to be in Christianity. Because most people they don't know what this life is about in the first place. And this is where we get into like God takes. So I'm getting to real theology now, Joe. You started me and I can't stop. It's like because God has to take some responsibility. We're born into this world. We have no idea what it's about. There's no instruction manual. There's no, we have desires, we have lust and hunger, and there's dangers all around us, and there's deception all around us. And of course, like any sort of reasonable God knows that this is not an easy situation. And you think on top of that, it's going to be like, and if you blow it, you're going to burn forever, or you're just going to be annihilated. It doesn't make sense. And I understand the reason people go with it is because there's so much other things, so many other things in the Bible that do make sense, that are powerful and that are wise. And I agree with that.
Yes.
But just because this bit makes sense, you can't just go, well, this bit's got to make sense. It doesn't. We have to be honest about that. It doesn't make sense. And for 99.9% of people, I don't believe Christianity is even really working the way they claim it's working. I don't believe they're getting the joy, self control, strength.
I
I,
don't either. I think that's one of the reasons they believe in hell. And when someone says there's no hell, they go, "Yes, there is. There's it's." What do you think about me? I'm giving up all my fun life. I'm not. I don't have relationships with family, and my kids are hurting right now. And I've given up. And you're telling me that none of us are going to hell? No way. Someone's going to have to pay a price for this stuff, and it ain't going to be me. Um, I've always said if a husband and wife had a couple of kids that disobeyed and they stuck them in the basement of their house for years and tortured them every day, but not enough to kill them, just enough to keep them alive. And after a few years, they were discovered and the kids were removed. Those parents would be prosecuted to the highest point of the law. And yet, that is God in hell. That is God and hell. And parents wouldn't even do this to kids. It's so outlandish. But boy, you're right. When cognitive dissonance can play games with your brain. And I think this is one of the biggest ones, which, by the way, I'm still wrestling with. I told you this in the last few days. That why
yeah,
is it so hard for me to get that out of my brain? Uh, I believed it. I taught it. It was just part of who I was. And of course, that was the worst part about me leaving the church. I didn't miss the people in the church. I hate to say that, but I'm being honest. I didn't miss the services. Seriously. I didn't miss the how much did you give on Sunday? We didn't see your money in the plate. That, by the way, that was asked me the last day I was in the church. Someone came by my house that night. Um, didn't miss any of that. But what was in my mind was, have I just bought a one-way ticket to eternal torment? So if I didn't have that belief to start with, it would have been an amazing difference. And so this is something I'm still working through myself. I know one thing, there'd be a lot more joy in this world. There'd be a lot more optimism in this world. We would get along great with each other. I hear you say all the time, Matthew, to people that don't like you on Facebook or make snide comments, you go, I better find a way to get along with them now. I'm going to be in heaven with them. So I got to find a way now. Just that viewpoint is powerful and optimistic.
It's true.
So,
It's true. It is. And I just want to say, there's a line in my stand-up show, which I put online, where I say, like, now, if you're a universalist, you believe everyone's going to heaven. So rather than saying go to hell, you say go to heaven. That is James's line. James gave me that line very kindly.
thank you. Thank you,
And I
brother.
wanted it to be, I wanted, I wanted it, I hope it catches on because, but I
Go
do
to
think
heaven.
that it's true because we are going to have to we are going to have to get on. And it's so complicated, this stuff, because, I don't think we realize actually how much we've been set up. And I don't mean that
Yes.
horribly, but we've been set up by God. And I don't mean that like, because I love God, like the classic God, the creator of the universe. But I think this world we're living in has been set up in a very particular way to produce a very particular result. And it's about love. I really think God is looking, the classic God, creator of the universe, is looking for a partner. And you can't just if you're God, you can't just create a partner because the minute you create, they'll go, "Oh, I love you. You're amazing." They become like a child because God is so amazing. So the only way she could do it, this is my belief, is we've kind of had to be put into exile and all this stuff with hell and the Garden of Eden and war and hunger and famine. It's a painful, painful, painful lesson, and it's a painful process, but it was the only way that the creator of the universe could create or allow us to create ourselves, our own identity and our own evolution of who we are. Like we've had to grow up through human history. So that's so I believe it's not about like, oh, you're sinners that need to repent. No, we're embryos that are developing into what God would love us to be, which is love. And it was a risk because I don't think she could be 100% sure it would work. We might have gone. I don't know if she knew it would work. I think it has worked because I think we're heading towards love. But anyway, that's my
Hmm. I can tell you this:
yeah.
we need more time spent on it. And I'd love to hear some comments. By the way, not just hey, great job, Matt. I'd like to hear some comments from the listeners regarding what you're thinking about what he's saying, and particularly with my struggles to adopt it because I want to adopt it. Why would I not want it? Why would I not want that? So, whatever it is, and if you think it's the good part of my soul that's left that's saying, oh, don't buy into that, then say that. Let me know it. And if you have other ideas on this concept of universalism and heaven without hell, I sure would love to read it. And I think it could be very encouraging. There's no doubt that the comments will be very helpful. Thank you for sharing that. Uh, so, Matt, so many listening right now are processing, should I stay in this church or should I go? Or maybe they have already left just recently and are wondering, now what? Where does it go from here? And there's some like me that once I got out, there was no church at all for me. I think for the rest of my life. Call me twice as much a son of hell if you want to, but I don't care. But I do know that that had that effect on me when I left. And I just was curious about any advice, any encouragement you may have for people that are processing all of this.
So I mean, I'm going to be frank about the ICOC. I don't think it's a healthy. I think it's the sooner you leave, the better. But I think everyone has to come to that decision themselves. So it can't be like, because I think there's still so many cultural things, even in the more liberal ICOCs, so many things that you don't get to evaluate when you're still in. But I know people have children and support groups, so I don't know if that might be better for them to stay in. But in terms of you know, depends on the reasons why they're staying in. I know when I remember sitting on my sofa after I decided to leave, and also at that point I was like, I can't keep fighting the ICOC because it felt at that point like a bitter, like to use Kip's expression, a kind of vengeance. I wanted vengeance. And I thought, I don't want to do that. Up to that point, I felt like I was serving God and the Spirit of God was moving and I was like doing it. I was trying to free people. But I remember when I left, sitting on my sofa thinking, if I carry on doing this, it feels more like it's vengeance and I'm just trying to beat them over the head. So I stopped. I mean, I still go on the forums and I was still involved, but I pulled back quite a lot. Um, and I think we all have to go on our own journey. I know it's a cliche. Like I started doing stand-up comedy, which gave me something to focus on. It's very all-encompassing because there's so much terror when you first do it, and trying to get the gig. So it became like it took my focus off the church and off that stuff. Always at the back of my mind, it was like, what does this all mean? Like you said, Mary pondered these things in her heart. So I was still thinking because I'd had some very powerful experiences of God, both before I became part of the ICOC and in the ICOC. I had some prayer times that I felt like I experienced heaven. So and some Bible verses that came alive to me so powerfully and other experiences, just small little powerful experiences that kept me going. But I think with church, like I would say you and Steve, that was more church than any, I'm sorry, than any ICOC church. Your eavesdropping was
Yeah.
closer to what I would call true church because people were involved. People like me and our friend Dave Meyer, completely opposite spectrums. He absolutely believes in the Bible and in hell and in a lot of those things. I'm coming in trying to deconstruct everything and talk about the ICOC's issues. And we were both there. We were both there. And me and Dave I still consider David a friend. We've chatted on the
Yes.
phone and that we still conflict, but I feel like he genuinely cares for me. And and other people were there. Shari was there, and Kevin Darby, and so it was great. There was a little community going. Whereas when I look at the and this is church. You and me talk. You and Steve started that thing of like the Church of Two. I don't know if you guys came up with that, but that's brilliant. And for a long time when I left the church, there was only one person I was in regular contact with. I had one friend, an ex-member of the church, my last discipler, in fact. We stayed really good friends and we would chat all the time. And then I would see other people occasionally. But for a long time, it was like, and that was enough. Like you don't necessarily need loads of people in your life. You just need a couple of really good people. I
Good
have my
point.
wife, I have my family. I did have a wider community. So you do need some people in your life. One minimally, it helps. And obviously, I still believe in the creator, so I could still pray. There was still a battle going on with that. But for me, ultimately, wherever there is love, that is church. That is church. For me, like it doesn't really matter whether they're an atheist, where people care about each other and respect each other and love each other. That's all you need. You don't have to believe the same things. Like
Thank you, Matthew.
all my family
That's
are atheists, so
great stuff. By the way, it was Kevin Darby that came up with CO2, Church of Two.
Oh, is it Kevin Darby? There you go.
Kevin Darby, who,
Yeah.
by the way, I've been thinking about lately. Kevin, get in touch. Our time has come to an end.
Okay.
Wonderful job today, Matthew. Thank you so much. And
Thanks.
great to hear about these super important items that you're speaking about. And whatever it was that woke me up at 3 in the morning that said, what about we hear from Matthew today? How about that? Thank you to whoever, whatever it was that inspired me for that, because I can already tell it was a very good decision. You know how much I love you. You know how much I believe in you. Love working with you. I trust you with my life. I would trust you with my family. And get this, we've never met face to face.
No, we haven't.
That says something about the power of relationships that may even be online, that we've not had a chance to connect face to face. It's very powerful.
And yeah, and I feel like with you and Alan and Kristen and Shari I've never met,
I
Aldo I've never
know.
met, Steve Johnson I've never met, Marty Wooten. I know some of these people I have conflicts with. Marty Wooten I've met, Dave Meyer I've never met, and yet I feel like we are a community. And you could go back to the Bible. Paul was writing to people letters that sometimes he'd never met them. Some of those people he'd
Right?
never met. It's like anyway. Love, I think love can traverse all this stuff, man. Because
It seems to be doing that. Thank you, brother.
thanks, James.
I'll
Love
see
you, man.
everyone for our next session.
All right, see you. Bye.
Goodbye.